Hello, everyone, and welcome to Growing Up in the Shale Fields, a virtual fracking tour presented by the National Children's Campaign and Zero Hour as part of the Vote for Our Future campaign. We are so fortunate today to be joined by so many amazing partner organizations who you'll hear about in a second. And it is really thanks to all of these great organizations, great organizers, and great people who have helped work over the past few months to put this event together. Before we begin, I just want to give a quick overview of the campaign and of the event for those who may be joining us for the first time. So the Vote for Our Future campaign is a joint initiative of the National Children's Campaign and Zero Hour aimed at encouraging young people to get politically involved and adults to get involved and vote on their behalf. And so we're hosting events from now through Election Day aimed at mobilizing our generation and those who care about us. And so if you want to get involved, you can go to voteforourfuture.org. And especially if you want to register to vote or get someone else in your life to register to vote on your behalf, you can go to voteforourfuture.org/vote and you can sign up there. If you didn't RSVP for this event, but you're still tuning in, that is great and welcome here. If you want to RSVP here for this event, it's voteforourfuture.org/fracking. And just that way we can get your contact information and let you know about every other event that we're having. If you want to know about future events, you can go to voteforourfuture.org/events. We've got some awesome stuff coming up, including our week of action next week for Convention Week. So we have events Monday through Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, on everything from child immigration to environmental justice to reopening schools and more. So please tune in all week long, every day at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We've got another live stream right here on whatever platform you're using to watch this event. So please tune in. And last but not least, we have Vote for Our Future merch. So please check that out, voteforourfuture.org/merch. If you want to check it out, some of it looks like this, and some of it looks like that. We've got t-shirts, we've got hoodies, we've got long sleeve, short sleeve, we got face masks. So please check all that out. And yeah, that's about it with kind of the stuff that I gotta say. And now I'm just gonna say the stuff that I want to say, which is just the amazing work, just talking about the amazing work that all these great organizations and both youth and adult leaders are doing on behalf of our generation. Really quick, be sure to follow the National Children's Campaign on all the social medias. Check us out there. And if you want to get involved, if you want to organize a live stream like this and use our platform, please email us at info@nationalchildrenscampaign.org. So what we're doing with the Vote for Our Future campaign is we are hiring fellows to lead teams of young people around the country, one of which that you'll hear from today is our Pittsburgh fellow, Leandra. She's building a team of young people. And if you want to join that team who is changing the world, both in southwestern Pennsylvania and beyond, again, email info@nationalchildrenscampaign.org or just direct message us on social media if you want to join the team. And now I'm going to bring up Lois, who is an amazing organizer who has helped put this whole event together. Before I do, I just want to give a quick warning, kind of statement just on behalf of everyone who's speaking today, and just that every single person who is speaking at this event is representing themselves and their own organizations, but don't necessarily speak for others on this panel and at this event. So with that, I am happy to turn it over now to Lois. Lois, take it away.
Really bad now. I can't even hear him.
Lois, we got you? Looks like we're having a little technical difficulties with Lois. Lois, can you hear us? All right. Okay, we'll hang on for Lois for one more second. In the meantime, this is just another opportunity for you to go check out the Vote for Our Future merch. Please go check that out while you're waiting for Lois to join us.
I'm here.
Hey,
Sorry
Lois.
about that. We had a little glitch in the system for a minute. Thank you so much, Jonah, for having me and allowing me to be part of this amazing project. My name is Lois Bauer Bjornson, and I am the Southwestern Pennsylvania Field Organizer with Clean Air Council, and I host Frackland Tours. Frackland Tours were implemented for Washington County, Pennsylvania. We are the most heavily fracked county in our state. And they really give people a firsthand account of what it is like to live and grow up in the shale fields. So you'll be hearing today from some youth in our area who I work with. My children and myself included are impacted by the industry, and other folks and other friends with their children as well. So I hope that this is an eye-opening experience for people and that they can understand truly what goes on in the shale fields. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lois. And everyone, please go check out Clean Air Council and check out all the amazing partners. You can see some of them are kind of hidden by my little face box right here, but please check them out. Earthworks, Clean Air Council, Zero Hour, Southwestern Pennsylvania Environmental Health Project, PSR Pennsylvania, and the Breathe Project, and of course, National Children's Campaign. All these folks have done amazing things. And so, Lois, do we just want to hop in straight then to the first video? You want to kind of give an overview of when you started doing the tours, why you do the tours, and what we can expect to come from them, and then just hop right in?
Sure. I really began the tours to, as I stated, to give people a firsthand account of what it is like to grow up in the shale fields. I grew up in Washington County. I moved away and I moved back to, raise my children there so they could grow up and, run and play and have a great outdoor experience. So these just really came out of a need for the community and for others who do not live within our community. This way, people are able to understand what's happening in our area.
Looks like we're losing Lois again. We'll try and get her back. In the meantime, I can just say that Lois, oh, she's back. There we go.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry. Not sure where I cut off. We keep blanking in and out. My apologies. But I was stating that the tours really came about out of the need for us to help understand what is going on where we live, and mainly for myself and my children and our communities. And it was really also implemented for elected officials to come out and take a look of what is really happening. And so for those of us that don't, grow up and live in the shale fields, that they have a true understanding of what it is like, from the health impacts to the air and water impacts to the land disturbances, and everything that comes from industry being in our backyards. And that is why the tours were implemented, to give people a broader knowledge of what it is like to live in the most heavily fracked county in Pennsylvania, which is Washington County.
So important. And so two of the people that you've brought to these tours in the past are going to be joining us this evening, State Representative Sarah Innamorato and State Senator Katie Muth. And so we're so excited to have them with us towards the end of this event. So everyone be sure to stay tuned for that. Lois, any final words of wisdom, or should we just head straight into that interview?
I think we should just head straight into the interviews. I think that the interviews speak for themselves and give people a true understanding of what it is like to live and grow up in the shale fields.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Lois. And let's hop right in.
I'm sitting here with Gunnar. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm Gunnar Bjornson. I am 13 years old and I live in Cedar Hill.
So, with the poor air quality here, have you seen anyone in your school or any of your friends or family affected by it to a devastating degree?
Well, I've been affected by it. I feel like the air quality would have some part to play in this, but during a couple summers back, when they started bringing in new fracking pads, they would frack during the night, and I started having really profuse nosebleeds. It would fill, there was big clots the size of dimes or quarters just coming out of my nose, and it was just blood everywhere.
That sounds terrifying. Has the air quality and lack of good sleep quality affected your education?
I would like to think so. I mean, I don't get enough sleep, which is very important for a person at my age because you need a lot of sleep when you're a teenager for your brain to fully develop.
Mhm.
And I would say yes, it has affected me greatly in school.
So, how does the fracking affect the air quality? Can you elaborate on that?
I think the fracking, well, there's two things about it. You got the trucks passing by, passing off extreme exhaust fumes every day. Then you got the air from the frack well coming off, which is making the air quality even worse for someone. So
Yeah. You said that it feels like all of this responsibility is on your shoulders.
yes.
How can adults, how can politicians make our voices feel valued, in your opinion?
First off, I would like to see them actually listen. I would like to see them actually answer some of the questions we have.
Mhm.
I want them to ponder of what we have said, and I want them to take action on what we've asked them to do because that is their job.
You said you feel like we play a part in the air quality. Why?
I feel like everybody plays a part in air quality because we all have a job to do, and we all got to respect that job and do our best to carry it out. And I feel like that's what most people should do.
A lot of environmental activists, they always advocate for individual action and using public transportation and using reusable bags. But with the quarantine, we found that the air quality actually hasn't gotten better in Western PA, even though we aren't driving cars as often as before.
Yeah.
What do you think that says about the situation with the fracking?
Since our economy is doing very bad and we're in a recession, then that means they're going to have to strip back some regulations so we can make money.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's why the air qualities keep getting worse instead of getting better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you, Gunnar.
Thank you. I'll be here all week.
So that was the first of 7 different people that you'll hear from talking about their lived experiences during or living, growing up, their childhoods in kind of fracking country. And of course, that was interviewed and very expertly handled by Leandra, who, like I said, is our Pittsburgh fellow, and you'll hear more from her later. So first of all, I'd like to now welcome to the stream our amazing panel of adult experts who's going to be talking about their work on fracking and what we can do and what you can do to take action and make a difference. So welcome Matt, welcome Ned, Melissa, and Leanne. Thank you all for being with us.
Well, thanks for inviting us.
Of course.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So maybe first, kind of before we go into the introductions and the first question, if you all just wouldn't mind kind of introducing yourselves. Maybe Ned, we'll start with you, just kind of who you are, what you do, what your organizations do.
Thanks, Jonah. My name is Dr. Ned Katire. I'm a Pittsburgh-based pediatrician where I write and edit my practice's blog, the Pedia blog. I'm a member of the American Academy of Pediatrics Council on Environmental Health, and I'm a medical consultant for Southwest Pennsylvania Environmental Health Project, which is a public health nonprofit organization that helps people who live in the frack lands understand what they're facing as far as health risks, and we try to help them reduce those health risks. I'm a board member of Physicians for Social Responsibility Pennsylvania and a climate reality project leader. I would like to thank you, Jonah, and thank the National Children's Campaign for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Of course, thank you. Leanne, why don't we go to you next?
Sure. Thanks, Jonah, and echoing those thanks for the work that went into this event and to everyone that's joining today. My name is Leanne Leiter. I am the field advocate for earthworks in Pennsylvania and Ohio, and you can find me throughout the Appalachian region, often toting a specialized optical gas imaging camera that lets us see the normally invisible air pollution from oil and gas development. And I'll be showing you examples of that shortly. I also live in Washington County, not that far from Lois, and in the heart of the shale gas boom. So this is a really important topic to me, and it's really an honor to share a little bit about our work and what we've been finding in the oil and gas fields with you all.
Thanks, Leanne. Matt, how about you?
Jonah, thank you so much. Appreciate being invited to this event. My name is Matt Mahalik. I am the executive director of the Breathe Project. We are an umbrella organization coordinating the work of about 42 other organizations in the region, all working to try to improve air quality in southwestern Pennsylvania and the Ohio River Valley area. It's a big job. Our air still is very bad. The latest statistics that were released puts our region's air at about the 11th percentile nationally. That includes the entire region. It really takes the effort of air quality scientists, public health professionals, physicians, advocacy organizations, people who understand air quality monitoring technology, and of course, community members themselves in their own organizations, in their communities, all working together to try to hold regulators accountable, and especially polluting entities. So our work really began with addressing existing air quality issues, and the fracking issues just add to the problem and make things worse and make things tougher for all of us. So I appreciate being part of this event tonight. Thank the National Children's Campaign, and it's great to be with my colleagues here.
Thank you so much. And I think every single type of person that you just mentioned and every single type of group that you just mentioned will be featured on this stream, either on this panel or on other panels tonight. And so we're super excited to have that. And last but certainly not least, Melissa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Troutman. I am a research and policy analyst at Earthworks. I've been here for about 2.5 years. And at Earthworks, my main gig is oil and gas waste, which we'll talk about more later. I also am a frontline resident, like other people here on our panel. Except I live up in Potter County, Pennsylvania. We are one of the most rural counties in the state, and my family happens to live next to a fracking wastewater facility. So I think we have a video to share with you later about what that's like. But I'm just really excited to be here. Thank you all for being here too.
Yeah, and actually we have that video right now. So we'll go to that and then start off with the panel. So this again is Melissa's kind of daily experience living in frackland. Yeah, so that is kind of, as you said, Melissa, kind of just your life and, the life for so many people, experiencing the fracking industry, the effects of the fracking industry. And so I'd love to, now hear a little bit about kind of your work, and specifically you talked about the fracking waste, Melissa. And so I guess my first question for you would just be kind of, what is fracking waste? What is it exactly, and where does it go? What happens to it?
Well, what is fracking waste? Before we get into that, I do want to say that even though living next to one of these facilities, fracking waste facilities, or living next to a well site, obviously results in a lot of truck traffic and noise and air pollution. And that is all very disruptive, from sleep deprivation to just the vibration that it creates. For us, the scariest thing is that this waste is being trucked over top of our water supply. We have two water supplies, over top of one and right beside the other. And we aren't allowed to know what's in it. Now, we generally know what fracking waste is because studies have been conducted. The industry itself has conducted studies and released reports on what this is. And it is, in the Marcellus and Utica Shale especially, it contains radioactive materials, heavy metals, toxic chemicals, and elements that are known to cause cancer. So when you drill an oil and gas well, you obviously get oil or gas out. But what a lot of people don't know is that you get far more waste out of that well than you do actual product. And that waste comes out in the form of solids, like the earthen drill cuttings that are being brought to the surface. Also, liquid waste that comes out of the ground. And these waste streams contain naturally occurring radioactive materials that are encased in our bedrock layers and would stay there forever were it not for drilling and fracking, bringing them to the surface. And of course, all of this has to go somewhere. And it's nowhere in the United States is it going where it's supposed to be. And what I mean by that is the oil and gas industry is exempt at the federal level and at the state level in oil and gas states from hazardous waste law. They also they are not covered under radioactive waste laws, which means that they're hazardous and radioactive materials in the form of waste do not go to hazardous waste facilities, and they don't go to radioactive waste facilities. Where they go is municipal landfills, where we also send our household trash. And they also, portions of their liquid waste end up going to, in a lot of cases, municipal sewage treatment plants, which are not equipped to treat those waste streams to remove the radioactive materials and hazardous materials, and yet discharge through their systems into the rivers, which we now know, thanks to scientists at places like Penn State University and Duke University, has led to radioactive riverbeds in Pennsylvania. And what I mean by that specifically is that scientists have discovered that the river sediment at points of discharge for this is treated oil and gas waste, are far above, contain levels of radioactive materials far above background levels. And that is obviously really concerning.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Ned, would you be able to kind of, for everyone at home watching, just give a definition of fracking and kind of describe how it's done, and then how that in turn impacts people's health and livelihood?
Certainly. Fracking refers to drilling directly down into an ancient shale rock formation that contains abundant oil and natural gas, which we use to generate electricity and to manufacture chemicals and plastic. I live in Southwest Pennsylvania in Washington County, home of the Marcellus Shale, which is about 1.5 miles below where I'm sitting right now. A well gets drilled straight down into the shale. And once the drill gets into the shale, they turn that well horizontally and then drill sideways through the shale layer. They can go out several miles laterally. Once the well is drilled and cemented in place, that's when the fracking begins. Fracking refers to using huge volumes of fresh water, chemicals, and sand pumped into the well at extremely high pressure to open up the cracks in the shale and to allow the oil and gas to come up through the well and back up to the surface where it's collected. Fracking, though, is more than just about water and chemicals and sand pumped deep in the well. Fracking has a lot of supporting actors, the heavy diesel trucks that you saw in Melissa's video, the well pads that today have dozens of wells being drilled and fracked, the crisscrossing pipelines and the compressor stations and the processing facilities. And then we have cracker plants and chemical plants and more. Fracking creates a lot of pollution and it generates a lot of toxic waste, just like Melissa said, that it has to be disposed of responsibly, and it's not, without contaminating the environment. All of these moving parts of fracking threaten the health of people, especially children, and they harm the environment and all the creatures that live in it. Fracking, in order to make more plastic and chemical products, makes the growing problem of global plastic pollution even worse. And fracking accelerates climate change, which, as you know, affects everybody on the planet and even those who haven't been born yet. There is a myth that's told by the oil and gas industry that fracking can be done safely. But as you can see, as you've heard so far, there are lots of moving parts that make up fracking, and each part has its own inherent risks. They're major inherent risks. So the fact is that fracking has never been done safely anywhere.
Mm-hmm. I think that's, a really important message to hear is just despite what the people who make money off of the industry say, we can hear firsthand from the people who live fracking every single day that it is just clearly unsafe. And so next we have a couple more interviews with people who, like I said, do live in fracking country, who can tell you firsthand exactly how they're being impacted.
Hi, my name is Luciano. I grew up at Pleasant Hills, and I like to go outside and play some sports.
What do you remember about moving to the farm?
My gram and grandpap lived right next to me on the hill.
Did you like it?
Yeah,
Is there anything that you remember about the environment there or environmental issues there?
there was a bunch of like gas balls around us. So
Were there any health impacts to you or your family because of the fracking around you?
yeah, breathing,
Mm-hmm.
headaches. I definitely had a lot of headaches.
Your mom mentioned nosebleeds earlier.
Yeah, nosebleeds.
So your family left the farm because of fracking, and what happened when you guys moved here?
So when I was in kindergarten, Mom found out that fracking was right over there.
So can you tell me more about fracking around you now and around your community now?
Well, in school, when they would determine it was outdoor or indoor, they'd say it's indoor because of the poor air quality.
Really?
Yeah,
So is that a big issue here?
it's a big, yeah. It says we can't go outside, so it will be indoor because of the poor air quality.
So what has your mom done in your community against fracking?
She in like 2018, was it? She voted for council, and she goes to a lot of meetings. That's why she barely isn't home.
How do you feel about the position your mom has taken in council?
Well, I'm kind of neutral because I like that she's helping people, and then I don't like because she's never home.
Great. Thank you so much. Hi, I'm here with Nico, and we're going to discuss how fracking has impacted his life. Nico, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Nico. I'm 19 now. I live here in the area, do a lot of hunting and fishing, and I'm pretty much just an outdoors person.
So I guess I'll just ask, how has your activities with hunting and fishing been impacted by the fracking?
Fishing has been okay.
Mhm.
Hunting, not so much. I know due to like all the noise from the fracking and everything, like animals are starting to move out of the area further away from everybody. So,
Oh, wow. So, how has fracking impacted your daily life and the lives of people in your community?
well, for starters, the smell
Right.
is outrageous. It's disgusting. It's probably worse than sewage.
Yeah.
Um, During the day, not so much, other than like well traffic and everything, the trucks back and forth with equipment.
Hmm.
And at nighttime, here and there, there's loud banging sounds like they have like laid out sheet metal and taking sledgehammers to 'em.
Wow.
And it goes on for a good 20 minutes. It'll stop for about 10, 15, and then it'll start up, and it'll go till like 6 a.m.
Hmm. Are people getting sick?
Um, I know surrounding farms, there are people that drink from like their wells on their property.
Yeah.
The cows drink from the wells. I know people are losing livestock because of the fracking and chemicals and stuff getting into the water.
Hmm.
That's all you can really do.
So, do you think that we should take action, or do you, yeah?
Here, not necessarily. And I say that because like when my best friend died due to one of the trucks for the well pad, um, everybody here in the town knew him. We fell into like a great like mourning type
Mhm.
of thing, and it's still going on. And I don't think anybody in this town could really handle the mental stress that it's going to cause trying to fight with these people
Mhm.
to try and stop it.
What would it take to feel valued, and what would it take to feel justice in this situation?
Just being heard.
Okay.
Being heard is probably the most important thing here.
So right now, with this moment to have your voice heard, what do you want people to hear you say?
If the situation arises to where in any area of the state where there's going to be a gas well put in, fight before they put it in. Go to court, sue them
Right.
because it is not good.
Anybody else having audio trouble?
Oh, that's me muting myself. Yeah, so I was just saying, just another couple examples of people living among the fracking wells, living, above the Marcellus Shale, and everything that entails. So maybe Matt, why don't we go over to you? I'd love you to just kind of talk a little bit more about kind of your work. I know that a lot of climate change implications have occurred as a result of the fracking industry, as Ned touched on. Maybe you could elaborate on that.
Sure, thanks, Jonah. So when you hear the stories, you see the impact on people, on young people, and the lived experience, and the stress, and all of the health issues. And that adds up. That is significant and has a major impact on communities. And so folks at Carnegie Mellon and Princeton University did a study where they looked at whether or not shale industry has been beneficial over this, what's considered the boom period of time between 2004 and 2016. And they added up all the employment benefits, and they tallied the climate damage from the release of all the methane that's being released, as well as other chemicals, volatile organic chemicals and hazardous air pollutants. And they added up the air pollution from the operation of all of the trucks and the compressor stations and fractionator plants and so on. And they found for southwestern Pennsylvania, that number is $36 billion to the negative. So it's as if the people in southwestern Pennsylvania are paying with their lives and their health and their future. So of that $36 billion, so that's the net total. What they found was there was about $21 billion in employment benefits, distributed mostly in the rural areas. But the climate damage itself was $34 billion from the release of the methane and carbon dioxide. And then there was an additional $23 billion in terms of lives being cut short from air pollution. And so if you add that all up, that's where you get to 36 billion. And they also calculated that there were an additional between 1,200 and 4,600 deaths from the air pollution from this industry. And this is what's already happened in the community. So these numbers are significant, they're huge, they're real, and the faces that you see when the stories are told are exactly what that translates into lived experience. And it's really what I consider economic development malpractice. Leadership should not be making decisions that come at the expense of people in our state or any other state for that matter.
Couldn't agree more. I think that it's shocking when you think about it, how because of all the taxpayer subsidies, people are literally paying for this industry that is killing them.
Yeah, just to comment on that, you know, the people of Pennsylvania are giving Shell, which is one of the largest corporations in the world, a tax break of $1.65 billion to build their plant. And the only thing that Shell has to give in exchange is about 2,400 temporary construction jobs. And they don't even have to be Pennsylvanians. It's labor that travels around through the shale industry and works in different places. So, you know, nobody wants to deny anyone a job or an employment opportunity, but it's a high price that we're all paying for that to happen. And our legislature and our governor just signed a bill, House Bill 732, that makes tax breaks like we're given to Shell permanent for any chemical manufacturing plant that wants to locate into our state and bring more of that hurt to all of us. And so it's an outrage, and people should let their representatives know that thankfully the reps that we have on this webinar today all voted against that. But there are many that have been influenced by campaign contributions to support that. And it's really tragic.
I think it all, you know, it just speaks to both the corrupting influence of, you know, fossil fuel money in politics and the desperate need for not just, you know, a transition to renewable energy, but a just transition so that people aren't dependent on these industries that are poisoning them. And for more on, you know, kind of the health impacts and the science impacts, I want to turn it over to Leanne. And kind of as I do that, I'll start playing this video and then you can kind of narrate over it.
Sounds good, Jonah. So what you're going to see here is what I mentioned at the top of the call. And this is work that Earthworks, that my team and my colleagues in other states do across the US and beyond to find and document and report the air pollution from oil and gas development that you've been hearing about a little bit today, to show that pollution visually that you normally can't see with the naked eye. And you're going to see a couple examples of this technology in action. These are all just from Pennsylvania because that's where I live and do a bit of my work. But I will share with you that we have videos from across the US on our YouTube channel and other links that I think we'll be sharing with you later. So here you can see this specialized tool in action. I believe Melissa was actually along during this particular instance, and this is in the Allegheny National Forest. And you can see what with the naked eye looked like just a, you know, inactive, innocuous gas well is actually leaking air pollution. The camera lets us see a range of different hydrocarbons that come along with oil and gas development. These include things like methane. So that's a super powerful greenhouse gas, about 86 times more powerful than carbon dioxide over a 20-year time period. And it can also, these gases can include volatile organic compounds, some of those that I think Dr. Kataya and others have referred to, that are known or suspected carcinogens and can lead to other respiratory ailments and other symptoms. Probably some of which we heard some of the youth speakers being interviewed about in the videos earlier. Here's just another example of this technology in action at an oil and gas site in Pennsylvania. And you can see a tank here that is emitting this pollution. Again, you would walk by one of these sites if you were taking a hike in the forest, and you might smell smells, you might even notice, nasal irritation, but you wouldn't be able to see this pollution until we turn on this specialized camera. Part of what makes it so special is that it's got a series of different filters and sensors and a number of different really special features to it that let us see this pollution. It's the same kind of camera that our regulators are using. The US EPA is using these same cameras, and oil and gas operators use them too to look for leaks and other air pollution at their sites. So we're able to use this to show the public, what they are living with. Many of our requests come from impacted community members who are concerned or experiencing symptoms and ask us to come and check it out. We're able to share this with the public, with regulators, to ask them to enforce the rules and to strengthen the rules that are on the books, and to share with our decision makers and our legislators to show that even the rules that are on the books are simply not enough to protect people. Much of the pollution that you're seeing in these videos is permitted, and the rules simply aren't enough to really control this dangerous source of pollution. This one final example here, and then I think we can have Jonah switch it off. This is an example from a newer fracked well. I think the well at this stage had not yet been fracked. It was being prepared for that. And we just happened to get there and turn on the camera right as this large release was happening. This is a great example of where regulations just aren't enough. We reported this to state regulators, and because they weren't there on site to see it in action, and they don't have the technology to easily measure what's coming out, they can't prove that there's a violation, and there was no violation issued against the operator for this release. And you'll see a little bit in the background here, there are farms and homes surrounding this site. No one is notified when these types of releases are happening. No one's told to close their windows or bring their kids inside from playing. And I think that using this technology and being able to bring it to communities is a really important part of dealing with the health and climate crisis that's being created by oil and gas development.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm gonna get rid of this video now. So Leanne, then once someone's notified of this, once they're delivered this proof, what can people in the public do to kind of prevent this stuff from happening and prevent these things from being implemented?
Well, I think it's really key to note, and I think Melissa might have alluded to this, or others did as well, that this is a polluting industry. They in order to do the technology, the fracking, and even older methods of extraction and transport and processing, there's pollution along every aspect of the cycle. I mean, we're seeing it from, as folks mentioned, the diesel engines that are the hundreds of truck trips that are required to prepare one of these sites, from the pipelines and compressor stations that move the gas along, and leaks, even up to the point where it's being used in homes and businesses and power plants. So I think the key here is to recognize that the pollution is inevitable where we have oil and gas development, and we need to bring an end to this development. And an important piece of that, I think, is sharing this evidence. So I always welcome people to find our videos, that we have them organized by states, and we have literally hundreds of these videos from across the US. They're all on our YouTube channel and other links that I think we'll be sharing here in the chat as we go along. So find every opportunity you can to share those with your decision makers, your legislators, your friends, your family. I think it's a really important piece of showing that this is not a clean or safe energy source.
Absolutely. And so on that note of not being safe, we know that a lot of these health effects are disproportionately felt by children and by young people. So Ned, how exactly does that happen, and how are children and other vulnerable populations put at risk by the fracking industry?
Well, there are a lot of people who are at risk. Pregnant women are at risk. Children and infants are at risk. Older people and people with limited financial resources are at risk from this industry. People of color who live in environmental justice zones close to the polluting industries like oil and gas and the chemical industry, they're at risk. Residents who have pre-existing conditions like chronic lung disease and heart disease and kidney disease, mental illness, and children with asthma are at higher risk of having exacerbations of their diseases. Fracking jobs are dangerous jobs, and we have to remember the workers are at high risk of acute injuries and exposures and illness. And we shouldn't forget the first responders either. The fracking industry is not legally required to disclose the identity of the chemicals they use. And this secrecy puts first responders at a disadvantage when they're called on to respond to an emergency, that it puts their health in danger. Children, though, are really the most vulnerable, and they're vulnerable for a variety of reasons. Their behaviors and interactions with the environment increase the risk of exposure to toxic chemicals. Kids spend more time outdoors in the environment than adults do. That should be good, right? Well, not when the air is polluted. And as Leanne showed you, a lot of this pollution is invisible. You can't see it, but you can certainly smell it, and you can see it with the fancy camera that she uses. Kids play in the dirt and the grass. As I said, young children put everything in their mouths, dirty hands and fingers, toys and food. And every parent can tell you how hard it is to get kids to wash their hands before they put food in their mouth. Before they're even born and throughout childhood, children's bodies grow and develop very rapidly, making their organs and their body systems more susceptible to damage from toxic exposures. And fracking produces some pretty nasty pollution, as you've seen. Fine particulate matter that can cause cancer and other problems, lung problems especially. Volatile organic compounds like benzene that can cause cancer in children. Radioactive fracking waste that Melissa was talking about that ends up in the air and the water and the soil. And they can have terrible consequences as children become adults. Some chemicals discharged during fracking operations act as endocrine disrupting chemicals, which have been shown to interfere with children's growth and development. Prenatal and early life exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals have been scientifically studied, and they're linked to major problems with growth and cognitive brain development, even at extremely low doses. So remember, children have a long shelf life, that they have many years before them after exposure to develop symptoms of disease and cancer especially. And let's also remember that poor health in childhood increases the likelihood of poor health in adulthood. And the last thing I want to say about this is that there's a myth that children are tough and resilient and can deal with toxic exposures better than adults. In fact, the exact opposite is true.
Yeah, I think that's really well put, and just really demonstrates just how important it is to be taking action right now in order to safeguard, all the populations that you were just talking about, and especially children who have obviously, have really no decision-making process, have really no choice but to, be living where their families are located, right next to these, very dangerous areas. So Matt, one thing that Ned was talking about was workers and how they're, being put at risk. And so despite that, and, despite all the good that would come from switching over to, safer forms of energy, the fossil fuel industry is still pitting rural and urban workers against each other. How and why are they doing that?
So just to build off of the context that Ned and Leanne laid out. Today, our EPA administrator was in Pittsburgh rolling back methane emissions that were set years ago that protects people and protects our climate. The fracking wells that we have in our state emit over 500,000 tons of methane per year that leak from the pipes, from the compressor stations, and so on. And you see emissions like Leanne documented, and you recognize the impact on children, and you think, how can a regulator possibly roll back standards that make things worse for our children? But that's exactly what Scott Wheeler did today. And the only way an industry that operates the way that it does, that can function, is to continue to try to pit people against one another. And that's what they do with workers. So everyone has to earn a living. People are willing to work hard, and they should be paid to be able to live well. But that shouldn't be a situation that forces people to have to choose between their health and their livelihood. And this industry is dependent upon that. They can certainly do things to improve conditions, but they're not even willing to do that. And so their only way they survive is by pitting people against one another, by creating the impression that there's a zero-sum game, where if some workers aren't getting something, they're putting at a disadvantage for someone else to get ahead. And that's the wrong vision for the way a community should operate, the way an economy should operate. What really needs to happen is people recognize, where do we need to go to support our communities so that people can have a livelihood to sustain families and protect health and protect children. And that is not what this industry offers people. So it's important to understand that the only choice they have is to try to pit people against each other and stoke resentment. And we see that in commercials being broadcast on television in the Pittsburgh market right now. And people just need to recognize that they're being manipulated by an industry that has very self-serving interests.
I think that's, a really important distinction, something that everyone should be aware of, especially, come election season, people are starting to be flooded with different advertisements from the fossil fuel industry and from the candidates that they're propping up. So Melissa, I know that you've, been doing some really awesome work, and some of that work has even been in, coordination with people like Mark Ruffalo. Would you be able to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I came to Earthworks as a filmmaker and investigative journalist, and it's in that other world, which is mostly at Public Herald, which is a nonprofit I co-founded back in 2011. It's over in that world that I had the extreme fortune to become friends with Mark Ruffalo, and I did that through defending water and through the fracking fight here in Pennsylvania. And we released a documentary called Triple Divide that was back in 2013 that Mark narrated, and was an investigation of the cover-up of water contamination in Pennsylvania due to oil and gas fracking development. And since then, our Attorney General, Josh Shapiro, in Pennsylvania, has conducted his own investigation and found that the regulators and elected officials in Pennsylvania are not protecting us. The results of a grand jury investigation found that they are not only not protecting us, but in many ways harming us by being with the harm that the industry is inevitable wherever this industry comes to town. And we at Public Herald, I have a new film coming out with Mark on September 4th is the virtual world premiere. And if any of you are interested in attending, you can go to invisiblehandfilm.com. And for $1, you can reserve your spot at that premiere. And that film, Invisible Hand, I'm sorry, I've got fruit flies all around me, you guys. Sorry. That that film, Invisible Hand, is about the rights of nature movement, which is a mechanism that's been used to fight back against all kinds of corporate harm and toxic poison. And it's not only about the rights of nature movement, but it follows 3 communities in their fight to to give nature legal rights, right, that recognize nature as a living entity that has the right to exist and flourish and naturally evolve, which is really taking traditional environmental knowledge and what the indigenous peoples and original caretakers of this land already know and shoving it into Western law, because the reality of our culture, not just our legal system, but our culture, is that our system is rigged against us. It is rigged to favor private property and corporate profit over people and commerce and all of these things that we already know, right? But the rights of nature movement, in conjunction with the community rights movement, is a way to push back against that. And like I said, we're having the world premiere virtually because of the pandemic on September 4th, and y'all can tune in. Mark will be there. Myself and my co-director, Josh Perbanik, will be there, and a couple people from the cast will be there to chat afterward. So. And then it's actually, there's fracking waste. So one of the communities in the film, 2 of the communities defeat fracking waste. So we have to deal with a lot of losses in this fight, right? But the film follows communities that won. One community banned injection wells at the local level. Everybody told them they shouldn't do it, that it wouldn't work. Lo and behold, 6 years later, it worked. And it's the only time that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has revoked a permit for a radioactive fracking well. The only time. And in their revocation of that permit, the state cited the local ban as the reason why they were backing off. The other community is actually my hometown, and we, together with the Seneca Nation of Indians directly downstream from us, came together and also defeated a fracking wastewater facility on the Allegheny River up in Potter County, where I'm from. So it's really inspiring, and it details the mechanisms by which these communities are doing this. And again, Ruffalo is awesome. So tune in.
Awesome. Yeah. So again, for $1, invisiblehandfilm.com. So I want to go now just to everyone, give you all a chance for just final thoughts, action items, words of wisdom for everyone watching at home. And I see also we have one question in the chat right now that maybe, I don't know, Leanne, you want to work into your final thoughts. How are communities notified in advance before a fracking operation is developed in their area? And then, yeah, final thoughts from everyone. And thank you all so much. Leanne, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thanks for the question. And I think this is a big problem that folks deal with, is that there's really inadequate notification for communities when oil and gas development is coming. It varies depending on where they're located and what type of project we're talking about, and a lot of different factors. But when it comes down to it, the burden is really on people, residents, to try to find information that's not easily available, and to take time and get the expertise needed to resist these projects, to contest a permit, or to speak at a hearing, or to contact their legislators and to say that they don't want this development. And in many cases, the best solution for many communities is to have protective ordinances in place before the development comes to their area. And I think Melissa, some of what she shared is really relevant to that. And I've seen Invisible Hand. I got a sneak preview of it, and there's a lot of great information in there about that topic. So I definitely recommend watching that for a crash course in how to get communities notified in advance. And just as a final thought for actions that everyone can take, I recommend checking out, as I said, our kind of huge catalog of these proof of pollution, lots of different videos from different types of facilities. If your community is considering or being burdened with the possibility of a pipeline or compressor station, oil and gas well, you can find many examples there that you can use to educate yourself and others about why that might not be the best choice for your community and its air quality. So you're very welcome, Kiki. And the link for that is earthworks.org/CEP. Thanks.
And yeah, that's on the screen right now. Really quickly for everyone else, I'll let you all do that. And kind of while you all are speaking, everyone who's watching at home, please be paying attention to the screen. I'll just be throwing up different links for each of the amazing organizations that have helped put this event together. Matt, why don't we go to you next? Final thoughts.
Thanks. So I think the main final thought is just to acknowledge that we all know better than to allow this to continue. We've been down this path before in our state. We've always been a heavily industrialized state. We know what the experience is when you rely on high volume, low margin commodity industries that are highly cyclical, and they leave in their wake social and environmental and health damage that takes decades to clean up. We've seen this with the steel industry in Pittsburgh and surrounding communities all through the Ohio Valley and so on. So we know better than to go down this path. And so the key is to communicate that to your representatives. Communicate that their job is to make investments and decisions that lead to long-term prosperity for all of our communities, and not saddling us with these burdens and forcing us to dig out of these economic, social, and health holes that they create for us. So stay engaged, get involved with your community, and don't be shy about speaking up. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Matt. And for everyone, please check out his organization, his coalition of different organizations fighting for clean air, breatheproject.org. And they have some awesome stuff coming up that you should check out, breatheproject.org/upcoming-events. Ned, why don't we go to you?
Thanks, Jonah, and thanks to National Children's Campaign. And thanks to my friends and colleagues, Matt and Leanne and Melissa, for really, really good presentations tonight. There's a myth that's told, another myth that's told by the oil and gas industry, that fracking helps rather than hurts you. And as you heard this evening, that isn't true. As my grandmother used to tell me, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And this is why all of the viewers, all of the young viewers watching this tonight care about what we're talking about. We all depend on clean air to breathe and clean water to drink. We also need clean farmland to grow our food and clean energy to power our economy. Fracking for oil and natural gas contaminates our air and water and soil. It damages the health and the well-being of all of us, our families, our friends, our neighbors, and even perfect strangers who have every much of a right as you and me to be safe and to live in good health. So it becomes clearer every day, and we heard the clear evidence today that pollution created by fossil fuels doesn't just threaten health and doesn't just threaten the planet's climate system. It threatens your health and your planet, your economic future, and your democracy. And that's why everybody who's watching this cares deeply about all of this. Thanks, Jonah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Ned. And last, but again, not least, Melissa, final thoughts for the audience.
Well, thank you all. I've been watching their comments, and I just I wish I could hang out with all you guys. Thank you for joining. I see some of you are joining from Ireland, and that makes me think of the role we each play all over the world in this culture these economies that depend on oil and gas. And not only do we need and depend on clean air and clean food and clean water, but the reality of our civilization is that we need oil and gas, or at least that's what we're told to believe. And we obviously need to get off of that. We need to move away from that because we don't want to harm our family, our human and non-human relatives, right? And I just want to say a note of caution, in that as we transition and change our lives away from fossil fuels, that we always keep in mind the people who are living next to points of extraction. And that means mining operations where copper and lithium and the things that we need for a renewable energy transition, where those things are mined, there are people who live there. And there are non-human relatives who live there too. And we need to be extremely cognizant of that everything we do works in harmony with nature. Because if it doesn't, we're stealing from the future we're stealing from future generations by living outside the capacity of nature to carry not only us, but future generations. And I think we can totally do that. We're going to have to change our lifestyles a bit. And when people first hear that, I think they get a little nervous that, they're not going to be allowed to have a cell phone or a car. But I think that, this transition that we're going through as a society, as a global society, for those of you joining us from Ireland and other countries, that this is actually going to be really fun. It's going to be awesome because we're going to come together. We're going to figure out things like how to create resilient food systems in our own regions. We're going to rebuild a sense of community and how to take care of each other rather than depending on leaders to take care of us for us. So I'm really optimistic about the future. Do everything that everyone has already said. Document the evidence, share it with elected officials, use your voice and use it bravely. But also just, we got this. We just have to work together and, we're going to end up in a place better than we are today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to all of our panelists, our speakers today. And as we transition to the next part of our evening, part of our event, I'd just like to say that, the coronavirus has really shown us just how much we have the ability to transform our society, and how much people can change their behaviors and their practices. And I think, that says a lot about what we can do as a society fighting for a better future. And I'm proud and so happy that, these people on this stream tonight are going to be some of those leading this fight for a better future. So thank you all so much. Cool. So next up, we have a super special youth panel. Sorry to keep you guys waiting. I know we went a little long with that last one, but I'm going to add you all to the stream right now. Welcome, all of you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
So first, Leandra, thank you, first of all, for doing all those videos, and thank you to everyone in the top right corner of our screen who did those videos. We'll be getting to more of those interviews later in the event. But thank you all. I'd just love to go for everyone, just initial reactions to everything that was just said, what these adult experts were saying about the fracking industry. Does that ring true for you? Maybe Leandra, we'll start with you.
I was thinking as I was watching it, I just can't imagine learning all of that information and not feeling like motivated or determined to take action in some type of way. And that was how I always felt over the last year. Like, I can't imagine people seeing this information and seeing these statistics and still not acting. So that's sort of my initial reaction.
Nora,
Sorry. Going along of what Leandra's saying, I completely agree with her. After listening to what all the adults said, I'm more motivated to educate myself more on what's happening outside of my city. And it kind of it expanded like my knowledge of what I already know about fracking, and it kind of makes me want to like teach my other friends in my circle about what's happening in our state and how that impacts everyone.
that makes a lot of sense. What about our three folks all in the same camera? Maybe you all want to introduce yourselves since your names aren't on the screen.
Odessa goes first. Oh, yeah. I'm Kylan Bjornson.
I'm Odessa Bjornson.
Hi, I'm Gunnar Bjornson. Yep. And initial reactions, you got a lot of smart people over there. And they're just all from different organizations. And I think that it just proves that, like, if a bunch of people are together like that, even if they're from different places and organizations, you know, it just provides a lot of knowledge and makes a lot of sense. So, you.
Okay. Well, for me, my reaction, or more initial reaction, is some people aren't really educated about some things, but then there are some people who are, some as us and Leandra, and many other kids who I know. But
I would say you guys do have a lot of educated people in here because it is good to have a broad mindset on something and as large as a problem as this. And I feel like, yeah, it's really good to have a lot of smart people on this big project. And it makes me happy you guys got all these people together.
Yeah. So, Nora, how is fracking a part of your life, and how has it impacted you and your community?
Okay, well, I live in the city of Pittsburgh, so I don't live near, like, fracking is not in my backyard, but I know that fracking contributes to Pittsburgh having some of the worst air and water pollution. So it's normal for me to worry about the contaminants that are in our water, and for me, constantly have to filter my water. And yeah, but I can't really relate to the people that have fracking like right in their backyard. But as a person living in the city, I can take the time to educate myself that with people that are actually impacted and use that to actually to amplify their voices.
Absolutely. So, Leandra, then for you, because you also, don't live right next to the fracking industry, but are obviously, in the same way that Nora is impacted by it. How does an event like this, how does hearing from people who are directly impacted influence your activism?
I mean, and I experienced this when I went to go film those interviews. I think living in the city or living in a suburb near the city, we're in a bubble. So we know how the air pollution affects us, we know how the water pollution affects us, and we know how the soil pollution affects us. But it's very different being out there and like seeing fracking like rig or well in front of you and seeing these like 5 million gallon pools of the waste from fracking, and then seeing how close that is to like a neighborhood, and they're breathing in those fumes and their water is being contaminated with that waste. And so I think for me, it definitely puts things into perspective that, for us, like, we have to make sure to include those communities and include people who are like being actually immediately affected in our activism, because like they're actually experiencing it and they're the first people who are like, they're the communities on the front lines, and we're frontline communities but in a different way. And so we sort of just have to come together and make sure that like we're listening to what they're thinking and what they want. And yeah, so I guess it just makes me want to be more inclusive and more open-minded to different communities.
And for Kylan, for Gunnar, and for Odessa, kind how did you all get started in your environmental activism, and how did kind of your experience living, above the Marcellus Shale play into, your activism?
What started, my mother has obviously been an activist for a long time. I can remember when, before fracking was a big problem, there was a campaign that was about stopping the towers. It was about stopping giant electrical towers going through people's backyards. And I remember being a part of that when I was very young. And after that, fracking came, and my mom started to get involved. And as she gets involved, I get involved too. And it just, it led me to think a lot more about where I am and, how much more I understand than people that aren't directly affected by it. And just thinking about how we can get those people to understand how it feels. Yeah.
Odessa, what about you?
I got into the whole fracking, like, stop it, it's not good, because of my wonderful mother. And also because, when I was little, I remembered I asked my mom, I said, "Mom, what are those yellow sticks in our backyard?" And they're the little sticks that say there's a pipeline here. And she said, "Oh, there's a pipeline in our backyard." And I said, "Well, what's that?" And she was like, "Well, it helps, doesn't really help. It creates fracking and pollution." And I got into it and started to go to marches and meetings and many other things.
Cool. John, what about you?
I feel like part that my mom was a very big activist. She always goes to marches and meetings all across the United States. And I feel like that's a good outlet for everybody to finally speak up and get out there and finally free your voice. And I'm proud that my mom does this because not everybody can do this. And I can say she's very good at what she does, and she's going to help us get better and solve some of these problems.
Awesome. So Leandra, I know that you've, been organizing a bunch of, environmental protests and things of that nature in Pittsburgh. How has the fracking industry played into kind of your motivations for doing that?
Well, as I was saying earlier, I think there's a lot of crossover in the issues that we're experiencing. And as Nora said, the issues that we're experiencing and what's happening in Western PA with fracking, especially in Washington County, where there's like numerous cases of cancer and other really severe health complications because of the fracking. So I saw a lot of overlap in like Pittsburghers, at least Pittsburghers downtown, dying from heart disease and lung disease and strokes and heart attacks because of the air pollution and because of water pollution. And just, I guess fracking played into a part because that's part of the whole issue that I was passionate about fighting, which is just taking steps toward a greener future and a future where we have clean air, clean water, and clean soil. And continuing to frack in Pennsylvania is not going to result in any of those things. So that's how it played into my activism.
Awesome. Nora, so you're in Pittsburgh, and so, obviously near the fracking industry and its impacts and affected by it, but it's not in your face every day. So how are people able to access information about fracking if they're not living in it? How have you seen in Pittsburgh people be able to learn about the fracking industry?
So sorry, give me a second to think of your question.
Or is it accessible? Do people have access to learning about it?
Yes, people have access to learning about it, but I think it needs to be a bigger issue and more of a conversation starter when people talk about the environmental issues that happen in Western PA. I feel as if you look for the information, you'll find it, but it's not it's not constantly talked about. And I think if we increase accessibility to that information around the city of Pittsburgh, then more action will take place. And if we also not only increase accessibility to that information, but also amplify the voices of those directly impacted by fracking, then there will actually be change, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And so I think, one of the ways that we can do that and continue, to have these conversations is by talking to the people in your life about these issues, for our three folks, in the corner who are obviously living with this every day, it's, very easy to talk about. And then for those who are living, kind of outside the realm of the, initial, widely seen impacts of the fracking industry, it's even more important to be talking to the people in your life about how the fracking industry is impacting you, and then what we can do about it. And so I'd love to hear from all of you, just kind of how can we get involved? What can we do as young people to get our peers taking action and taking on the fracking industry, and the adults in our lives to take action and to vote on our behalf as well? Leandra, why don't we start with you?
Well, I'm all about civil disobedience. I did those strikes because I feel like protesting and I feel like being active in that way is a great way to draw attention to those issues, but I know that that's not the only way. So I guess I would say if you're of age, get registered to vote and be active in not only the national election, but local elections and state elections. After learning more about fracking, one of the things that stands out to me the most is how much of it relies on like small local governments that you never would have thought would hold the power to like determine a person's quality of life and what diseases they're going to get when they're 50 or 60 or 70. And so be active in that way, and also just open up, as Nora was saying, like open up discussions with your family and your friends about these things, and make them aware of it, because it's really easy. It's not really easy, but it's easy to find the information that's readily available, but you have to go searching for it. Like we aren't having like the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette or other publications here writing about it every week and writing about climate issues and environmental issues every week. So you sort of have to be the media in that way and be like reporting on these things. And so yeah, that's it.
Cool. So if you want to, again, I'm just, shameless plug right now for the Vote for Our Future site, but also please register to vote right down there. You can get involved. And then also, Leandra, you are building a team of young people in Pittsburgh and southwestern Pennsylvania to take on the fracking industry and, among other things, and change the way that government and organizing works. And so if you want to get involved with Leandra's work, you can go and email info@nationalchildrenscampaign.org, and you can also just DM us on social media. National Children's Campaign is on, I think, all of the major social media platforms, so please search us and check us out. How about next, let's go to Kylan, Gunnar, and Odessa. What about you guys? How can people get involved?
I think that's exactly the problem, and one of the main issues with getting change in the first place is people are not motivated enough to be active in this sort of thing, because the things that people in safer areas and places that aren't as close to industry, the benefits that they would get from it are much less than the benefits that, say, I and my family would get from it. And the goal for me is making those people, I'm not sure how, but making those people understand and making those people want to change as much as the rest of us do. And until that happens, it's really hard to get any type of change. And it's hard because people aren't involved unless it's directly affecting them. And even though there are these resources provided, and people can do things, and people can donate, and people can go to protest, and people can go to marches, and people can talk to their elected officials. There's all these things that people can do, but nobody is doing them. And I think that's one of the main problems.
Well, personally, myself, to get people involved is they can go to marches, they can go to meetings if they have the chance, obviously. But some people aren't educated in it, so they don't really know what to do or how to help the problem. And people honestly need to figure that out and help get to these marches, get to these protests, and help everything get better.
Yes, I feel like some ways people could get involved with this is quite easy. You can either explore it for yourself and figure out more about this, or you can be nudged in the direction to figuring out about this. It's not hard to get involved in anything. It's just whether or not you're going to stick with being involved in it, and if you're going to help what you're being involved with. And I feel like we need a lot of those people so we can finally get the message through, and we just need more voices to do that. So yeah, go get educated, go get involved with this stuff, and it'll be really helpful.
Awesome. And last but not least, I see we just have Representative Innamorato, Senator Muth on the stream now, so we'll get to them in 1 second. But first, final thoughts from Nora, then we'll pass it on to them.
Okay. I think something no one touched on is how powerful social media is, and how even with like the smallest social media platform, you taking the time to post out information about what's happening in Western Pennsylvania is increasing the accessibility to that information, and it's increasing the awareness to other people that may not have known about the fracking industry at all, and that helps increase people getting involved, because like everyone else said, it's not hard to get involved. You just need the information and the steps to get involved and to get motivated. Just like with registering how to vote, when people have the information to know how to vote, they will go out there and register to vote. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Cool. Well, thank you to all of you for being on this panel. And now we're going to bring on our amazing elected officials for some final thoughts. Here we go. Representative, Senator, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thanks so much for having us.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, perfect.
Good.
Have to say, just right off the bat, big fan of the color of your walls.
Oh, this was a COVID paint job with environmentally friendly paint. But thank you.
Yeah. So I know that you both have been, on the side of these activists that we've seen today on the stream, and have really been, fighting for, and alongside a lot of the people that we've had on here today in Harrisburg. So kind of how have these fracking tours impacted you all, and how have you experienced that? And then how have you let that translate into action in the Capitol?
You want me to start, Sarah? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I definitely think the fracking tour for me was a huge eye opener. So for backstory, I grew up in Westmoreland County. I lived there for over 20 some years. And so Washington County was right next door. So last Thanksgiving break, I went back home and I told my dad, I said, well, you're going to be my staffer today. I need you to give me a ride to this fracking tour. And so he went with me. And, he's been a lifelong Pennsylvanian, and, some of his friends are farmers and they have pumping stations on their land in Westmoreland County, but he'd never really seen up close like a full blown frac pad. And granted, I deal with the East Mariner pipeline project in my district out here in the Philly suburbs. It's not the same, both terrible, but not the same as a frac pad, as the water, the wastewater storage. our Commonwealth is such a beautiful state, and then, you know, Washington County is gorgeous, and then all of a sudden you go over top of a hill and there's this giant monstrosity. It's loud. I could tell the difference immediately in the air. My throat actually hurt for like the next 3 days after we went on it. And so to see it in your own eyes and then see the truck, see everything, it changes. I always knew it was bad. It's not that I didn't think that. It's just up close. And these poor landowners, they've lived there all their lives. You know, their wells get ruined, their health is ruined. And you're just like, what have we done? Like, how does this happen? And being a new legislator, and you have those moments of like, how did this happen? And you realize the importance of local government, right? And so that municipal level might be one of the most important levels of government because of the permitting and what's allowed there. And then the next, obviously, our state has no real regulations in terms of they're not meaningful. And so to go to Harrisburg and advocate for some of these things and the, you know, pay to pollute, dome of corruption, it's really challenging. So Sarah and I often find, our Representative Amarato and I find ourselves, you know, a little bit in opposition with others, but we also are really dedicated to talking to the workers that are in this industry and talking to the families that are impacted, and just, you know, local conversations, and, you know, trying to be a part of the solution for it, because we all know it's not going to come overnight, but we need to be working urgently.
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, your emphasis on local government is so important. I think that, you know, one of our earlier speakers, Melissa, was talking about how because of a local ordinance that was passed, it encouraged the then entire state government of Pennsylvania to block one of these pipelines. And so I think that that's obviously super important and just shows the power of, you know, people taking action in their communities. Representative Innamorato, how about you?
Well, I think what Senator Muth touched on so eloquently is the act of humanizing policy. We can look at regulatory code all day long, but I live in the city of Pittsburgh, and like Leandra said, like, I'm never going to have a frack well built in my backyard, but I do bear the consequences, and so do my family members and my neighbors, of the build out of this industry in our region. But I'm impacted in different ways than people who live in the shadow of these well pads. And so it's so important for us as legislators to practice co-governing, which means working with the communities that are impacted to help write the legislation and deploy the policies that are necessary to actually make sure that communities are leading, that health and well-being is put above corporate profits, and that we're actually thinking about our long-term public interest as opposed to short-term corporate profit gains. So, you know, all of those things sound great and they resonate really well at a rally, but then when you go and you sit across the table from a mother who lost their son to a rare cancer, when you go and you talk to people who live in a town that has gone through 2, 3, 4 boom and bust cycles where they're left with nothing, no tax base, and then they drill a well just right outside of their municipal boundary, and there are lights on every day, there's noisy trucks, and their house is literally falling down a hill and has no value. Like, when you start to get those stories, then it just makes it so much more real for people, and saying it's not just regulatory code that we're playing with here. These are people's lives, and you can't detach yourself from that when you are in elected office.
Absolutely. I think that's, you know, the most powerful thing that we can do is have this, you know, symbiotic relationship between elected officials and the communities that they're serving. I think that, you know, people often lose sight of the word representative as the title, but when you think about the actual definition, you are representing the needs of the people you live with. Mm-hmm. And, you know, obviously the same goes for Senator Muth. And, you know, actually needing to fight for your constituents and to fight for your communities. And so I think that, you know, by going out and listening and taking these fracking tours and listening to people, you know, living in, you know, Pennsylvania who are actually going through these things, and then, you know, working with them to change things is really the way forward. And so I commend you both and thank you both for, you know, taking a stand, you know, with communities and then and in your communities and then in the state capitol. So I'd love to talk a little bit about just kind of the importance of youth activism and how especially elected officials can create space for young people.
I share the sentiment that Melissa expressed actually when the first panel of adults was done talking about all of the darkness that is our current state of being. That is like the IPCC report, that is the amount of money that's flowing in our political system from the oil and gas industry. It's really dark and it's hard to see the light. And you know, even with all the health impacts, everything. And I've stood on the city county steps at a Fridays for Our Future rally that Leandra actually helped organize. And I was the second oldest speaker. And when I go to events like that and I see the passion and the drive of young people sharing their stories, fighting relentlessly, speaking truth to power, that reinvigorates me, because Harrisburg, like Senator Muth referred to as the dome of corruption, it's hard to be there rating, especially when you're a no vote. You're like one of 10 people in a building of a chamber of 203. It can feel like a losing battle, but we know that like we just started in 2018 and it used to be maybe one no vote. And now it's 10, and then we're going to build more. And we need to recognize that voting is so important, but being out in the streets is even more so. And then getting involved with your elected representatives and making sure that they hear you and asking them to work on the legislation that matters to you. So our job does not, it starts at the ballot box. It is not going to the ballot box. There's so many ways for young people to be involved, and they're really leading this movement. We're just a conduit for their work.
No, and I think they can definitely be a catalyst for us, when not just to give us a little oomph when it's a rough day, but also how we can elevate them if they are on social media, push out our message, elevate the message. Have community groups where people of all ages talk about how this industry has impacted them and their families, legacy pollution. I would love to see a panel of a family of someone as young as the panel before us, and then the next 2 generations before them, to just talk about what it's been like to live in that area, because that puts a face to the story. It puts a family to the story. It brings that human component, like, Representative Amarato said. It's not just policy and code and regulation, but this is why this matters. And so, everyone has a role in this. And if you're not old enough to vote, you sure are still old enough to make noise and make sure that the message is heard. And, the beauty of this fight is terrible and hard as it can be on some days, is that, we have science and truth on our side. So that is, at the end of the day, I do believe that ends up being the winner. It's just the matter of harm until we win this battle, right? And so, however anybody can be a part of that is these young kids are giving me hope. They already know more than half the people we work with. So that makes me feel better about the state of our future.
Absolutely. And for now, the shameless plug, for everyone who wants to get involved in that work, whether you're a young person or whether you're an adult who's being an ally to our generation, you can email info@nationalchildrenscampaign.org, or you can just send us a direct message on social media to get involved with all the work we're doing, including engaging with elected officials, many of whom are less receptive to what we're trying to fight for than those 2 on the stream with us right now. And again, of course, we want to make sure everyone is voting. And for and if you're not eligible to vote, if you are, constitutionally barred from voting due to your age, please be encouraging those in your life to vote on your behalf. And so have these conversations with them and make sure that when they're in the voting booth, they're thinking, or, licking the envelope shut, as it may have to be this November. Make sure that they are voting with your interests in mind and voting, like they care about you, because that's the way that they, treat you in every other aspect of their lives. And there's no reason why that should stop when they're voting. And so now, any last words? Thank you both for being here. Any last words for our audience before we sign off?
Our government is a reflection of us as citizens. No elected official is going to be your savior. So it's so important to stay involved in that, recognizing if you don't have elected officials that are reflective of your identities and your morals, then you got to do something about that. And that may be putting pressure on them, that may be running for office, that may be supporting someone else who's running for office. So really, that everything is political, and we need to make sure that we are always on and paying attention, because this is us, and it does work. Many of the people who were on that first panel brought to our attention the waste issue. When we think about fracking, we don't always think about the life cycle of the product and the waste that's produced, and then the human harm and the ecological harm that comes from that. And it was through those conversations and dialogue and work that we actually have written together collaboratively in partnership with the community and the experts and the scientists and the doctors and the policy experts. We've written legislation that we released today, just a few hours ago, that would actually close this hazardous waste loop and hold corporations accountable for where they place their waste and how they place it and what the human harm is. And it's only through building those bridges and that partnership and going to see your elected officials that you can bring these, what's going on in your community and your lived experience to their office, and actually start to write something that then you can organize around. And that is so special. And that act of co-governing is something that just is so invigorating. So please stay involved. Please look up who represents you, pay them a visit, tell them why you care about this issue, and demand and fight for a better world for all of us.
I don't know if I can follow that. She gave all the perfect instructions that you need to do. But I will say one other thing is that I do think we're in a pivotal moment here, even though we all probably feel like we are in a horror film of how many more bad things can happen at once. But when we hit rock bottom is how we build up. And so I feel like in COVID, a post-COVID economy, there's a moment here to really shift how things are run in Pennsylvania if we're all working together. And I think on the first panel, there was a discussion about, dividing us up amongst ourselves and putting this divisive message, and how we need to realize that, we have to have different jobs lined up for people that are currently working in this industry, but that there is this moment here where things could move more rapidly than maybe prior to this because of the market changes and things, and that we all have to be ready when that happens to advocate for that as we start to shift, so that we can really push the shift. So it's a big one, and it's a structural one, it's a societal one, but it's one that that is really good. It's going to save ultimately the earth, but certainly Pennsylvania, right? So I love everyone on this whole thing. This was a great event. I really appreciate being included. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you both so much for being with us. And just as a last note of appreciation, we've had many elected officials appear at different National Children's Campaign events and vote for our future events. You are two of the only ones who actually sit through the entire live stream and watch and listen and learn. And so thank you both for doing that. We're so happy to have you with us both on the stream and in this fight now and for years into the future. So thank you both for being on today.
And if Lois is still watching, I just want to say hi, Lois. I love you.
Lois, I'm going to bring you back on the screen.
Thank you.
You
guys are great. Bye, hi.
My dad said hi too.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
All right. What an amazing event. We've got a couple more interviews, just last words from different young people living in frackland, growing up in the shale fields. So we'll go to those interviews right now for some final thoughts there and then end our event. Thank you all so much for watching, and hope you can listen to these last couple interviews and these amazing, resilient young people.
Hi, I'm Leanne Tamira, and I'm here with Odessa to talk about the fracking in her community. How are you, Odessa?
I'm doing good. Quarantine is not that fun.
Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
I am Odessa Bjornson. I'm 10 years old. I live in Scenery Hill, Pennsylvania. I also live in Washington County, which is the most heavily fracked county in Pennsylvania.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how living in the most heavily fracked community has affected your life?
Not fun.
Why is that?
Well, in fact, they're actually fracking a well pad about, I think, 2 miles away, not that far away. And it lights up at night, so it's kind of hard to sleep. And then the truck traffic is even worse because it's loud. It goes past the house. It wakes me up, and then I can't sleep, and then I'm grumpy, and then other people are angry, and
Wow.
you know, we've been getting water notices that our water, you know, it's not good since my brother was like 8 months old.
Does that scare you? How does that make you feel?
I'm very angry at them for doing this. Like, we live in a beautiful area, lovely yard, and 500 feet from our house, there's a pipeline. It's supposed to be 2 miles away from your house, and it is 500 feet from our house.
Wow.
And it's not good. Like, I would have eczema so bad to the point where I would not dance until it cleared up, and my mom even wouldn't let me do it. Because it was just, people would be like, "Oh my gosh, what the heck did you do to your daughter?" People would freak out. They'd be like, "You scold her," and, you know, people just no one would wanna be around me because they would be like, "Oh my gosh, what did you do? Like, what happened to your face?" Or, you know.
What do you wish kids in Pittsburgh who grew up where I grew up would know about the reality of going to school, being a dancer, being a daughter, being a sister in a community where you're surrounded by fracking pads and you can't escape?
Well, I'd want them to understand that, like, I know myself. I am lucky. I'm privileged to have a house and a home and to be able to live, because there's kids that don't even have that. But what I want them to understand is that they don't have to deal with bad air quality, bad water. I mean, not being able to go outside sometimes because you can legitimately smell the air. It's so bad when they're fracking pads. I want them to understand that I might be privileged, and so might they, but they don't have to deal with the stuff that I deal with.
We're all privileged in different ways.
Yeah. Like, I'm not privileged because I have to deal with 3 brothers every day who are extremely annoying. But on another hand, I have to deal with fracking every day.
Well, thank you, Odessa, for sitting with me and taking the time out of your day to talk to me about something really important that people need to know more about. So thank you.
You are very welcome.
I'm here with Ryan, who I'll be talking to about his experiences with fracking. Ryan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ryan Latkanich. I was born in 2010, and when I was in 2013, I was affected by the fracking really bad. And right when I came out of the tub, all my skin was like red and welted.
Have you had other experiences with the fracking in your?
Yes, I have actually.
Want to tell me about those?
Like a year ago, when I was cleaning the floor for my dad, I was just cleaning it, and then all of a sudden, my arms, hands, everything where I had the water exposed to was starting to welt up again, like it did in 2013.
Really?
when we found out that our water was contaminated in 2016, that's when we found out that it was contaminated, and we were drinking this water for so long, and then they finally told us it was contaminated, that we were already exposed. Then we had to go to a toxicologist in Pittsburgh, and then they found out that we were actually infected really bad, and I also got asthma from it.
So what has your experience been with asthma?
I couldn't breathe for the longest of time, and now that this COVID-19 stuff has happened, I can't wear a mask because I can't breathe well with it.
Do you feel like your voice is valued or unvalued when you're talking about things like fracking and advocating for yourself?
Not that many people hear about this, but we need to get this helped. We need to get a GoFundMe up to stop fracking for everything.
So what would justice look like for you?
If they got sued pretty much for every dollar they had, and all the people that got us sick and stuff all went to jail.
How are you, Kylan?
I'm okay. I need to start going to sleep earlier because I'm feeling it.
We're going to talk about the fracking in your community. Your sister told me that Washington County is the most heavily fracked county or community in Pennsylvania. So I'd like to start off by asking you how that has affected your life and the life of, your friends and your family.
I've been very fortunate to not have as many health effects as other people do. I've known and I've met multiple people that experience types of rare cancers and skin conditions and rashes and just things that I am fortunate enough not to have experienced.
Yeah.
But for me personally, in my first world problems, for me, there's a lot of truck traffic, and one just went by right now. I mean, I'll sit and I'll play video games sometimes, and people will ask me while I'm on the microphone, like, what is that noise in the background? And it's trucks going.
That's how loud it is.
Yes, it's pretty loud.
How does it feel knowing that your community doesn't have the same environmental protections as downtown Pittsburgh or the suburbs outside of Pittsburgh, as downtown Pittsburgh?
Well, I know in my head that it's unfair, and I feel in my heart that it's unfair, but the people that are experiencing the fair side don't feel in their heart that it's unfair. And like I said, it's very hard to create that balance where, well, it's really not actually. It's just some legislation, but people don't want to change things. They always want someone to be at the bottom, because if somebody's at the bottom, then someone's allowed to be at the top. And people want to be at the top all the time, which is totally understandable. That happens anywhere. I mean, that happens in a game of tag, but
yeah,
it's just on a much bigger scale.
Almost like it's human nature.
And it's just the amount of control that these people have over me and other people whose children have serious health effects is not necessarily frightening, but just very eye-opening.
No, but that's interesting, like, because I feel really similar, and I hate saying it, but where it's hard to have hope in a sense because we only have so much time. I mean, fracking, of course, is affecting things right now, but it's also like, not only is it causing present adverse health effects, but then we're going to see all of these adverse consequences to our world because of fracking. And so it almost feels like until everyone experiences those things, then they'll want to make a change, but it'll already be too late.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is people aren't motivated to do anything because it's not hurting them. It's like, it's unfortunate, but
they're only aware of their own sort of bubble.
Not enough empathy to go around.
What a great way to end our event, kind of in the same way that it began, just hearing, again, stories and lived experiences from those young people growing up in the shale fields, growing up, experiencing all the impacts of the fracking industry on their health, on their happiness, on their livelihood, on the economy, on their education, and so much more. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. It's really been a treat to have such an amazing group of viewers. We hope that you'll tune in next week for all of our events. For events from now through Election Day, you can go to voteforourfuture.org/events. And specifically for next week, again, we're going to have an event every day during convention week, Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 1:30 Pacific. So please tune in there. You can find more information and RSVP at voteforourfuture.org/convention. Be sure to check out our merch. You can get some really great deals there on some awesome t-shirts, hoodies, face masks, more stuff like that. And of course, register to vote if you aren't already. Make sure you know when the next election is in your community and that you are able to vote in it. Especially now during a pandemic, make sure that you've signed up to vote by mail and get your mail-in ballot. If you're too young to vote, please be talking to the adults in your lives, whether that's your parents, your siblings, your grandparents, your teachers, your coaches, your pediatricians. Make sure they're voting and voting on your behalf, voting for your future. And everyone, of course, be involved, get out in the streets safely, take action in your communities, call, tweet, email your elected officials, tell them to take action with our future in mind, and of course, tune into all of the Vote for Our Future events. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time, Monday at 4:30 Eastern for our next Vote for Our Future event. We'll see you there. Thank you so much for joining us. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.